we started doing the lunches with the RBA in 2011. These lunches with the governor and or alternatively the deputy governor of the Reserve Bank at the invitation of the Economic Society of Australia Queensland Division, supported by Morgans. And I think yesterday was the best of them. I think the level of the debate was strongest. He thought our questions were very, very good, and it was a terrific audience. So I think it worked really, really well. But what he was actually there to do was talk about the changes to the structure of the Reserve Bank Board and the RBA that are beginning at the beginning of next year. And what the changes that he was describing, and there's 10 of them that I'll just briefly touch on, turned the RBA into a Federal Reserve with Australian characteristics, in that we changed the way the Reserve meets, we changed the public exposure of the members on the board, and give them a chance for a lot more media exposure, and I can see there's danger in that as well as benefit. But it retains the composition of the RBA board as drawn broadly from the community rather than purely internally from the central bank and internally from economists. Now that can go really well, or it mightn't, and so that's why it's a really interesting experiment. But from 2024, the board, instead of meeting 11 times a year, will meet 8 times a year. So that basically means that on average, like the Federal Reserve, it's meeting every 6 weeks. The meetings, instead of being one-day meetings, will be 2-day meetings. That's very similar to the Federal Reserve. To have longer, Federal Reserve actually has a combination of longer and shorter meetings. The purpose of all of this, having fewer meetings and they being longer, is so that the board members can be better briefed on the fundamentals of what's actually happening in the economy. So all board members will have the opportunity to attend internal staff briefings. That means that if you actually commit to be on this board, there's a lot more work involved and you have to do a lot more thinking than just previously turn up at the board meeting for one day. The post-meeting statement followed the decision will be issued by the board in the name of the board rather than the governor. That's similar to the Federal Reserve. The governor, in an identical thing to the Federal Reserve, will hold a media conference after each board meeting to explain the decision, and the conference will start at about 3:30, which is about an hour after the decision is released. Now, similar to the Federal Reserve, the Federal Reserve puts out the summary of economic projections after its meetings. So instead of that, the RBA will put out its statement on monetary policy 4 times a year after a meeting rather than at the beginning of a particular month. So that summary of economic projections will behave give the board briefing materials available to the public in pretty much the same way as the summary of economic projections does for the Federal Reserve. The board, rather than the governor, signs the statement on the conduct of monetary policy with the government, so it's binding on everybody in the board. And the board oversees the research activity of the RBA instead of just the governor. The board continues its current approach to climate analysis, including the implications of climate change, and the board will work with Treasury to undertake 5-year open and transparent reviews going forward. And that's what's the formal part of the changes. But there's a few other things. There's 4 other things, some of which I found entirely interesting. There is, at the end of every meeting, there's going to be a publication of an unattributed vote count. That's, again, is pretty much the dot plot that's provided with, similar to, but not identical to, the dot plot that's provided with the summary of economic projections. And this next one, I think, is fraught with, for me personally, fraught with interest and danger. Because all board members to make regular public appearances to discuss their thinking and decisions on monetary policy. Now, that means a whole bunch of people who have business backgrounds or union backgrounds, maybe increasingly union backgrounds, will be, and not necessarily any economics background at all, will be making comments upon the economy in the public. Now, I find that extremely interesting, and I think provides the opportunity for great information as well as potentially great entertainment. And the establishment of an expert advisory group to engage with the board, maybe to write the lines that they're supposed to say, and the board papers being published with a 5-year lag. So there are changes which make the RBA board similar, but not the same as the Federal Reserve. So I would call it a Federal Reserve with Australian characteristics.